Hey guys, Doug Blank here at the Hardwood in historic downtown Coral, Texas. Thought it'd be a great idea for us to walk through one of the classics. So let's go ahead and start working on an old fashioned. Take gazillion. So, old fashioned. This is a classic. And not even just a classic. I'm almost certain that the word cocktail was created with these specs. To make a cocktail, you need a few things. You need spirit, you need sugar, you need bitters, you need water. At the Hardwood, when I opened this place, I knew a lot of people may have heard of what an old-fashioned is, but maybe never actually had one. So I just wanted to make sure the one that we would make our house old-fashioned would be, what you would probably have turn of the century, the 1880s, inspired by the Pendennis Club, really, which is where a lot of people say that's where the old-fashioned originated. And let's run through the ingredients real quick. So what we like to use at the Hardwood, we're going to use Old Granddad Bottled in Bond from the house of Jim Beam's son, Tori. This is a great bottle. I always recommend getting this, especially for your back bar. It is going to be between $20 and $30 range, depending on where you're buying it at. And it's bonded, so that means it's protected by the federal government. It's just promising you that it is going to be what they say it is, a quality whiskey. And again, you don't necessarily want to break your bank to make an old fashioned. So if you have anything that gets definitely above the $50 mark, you don't necessarily want to play with that and put a bunch of ingredients into it. I always suggest your more expensive bottles either drink neat with some water or, on the rocks if you'd like. But at the same time, drink however you like to drink. If you want to, fill it up with Coke, go ahead. So, Old Granddad Bonded. Highly recommended. Oh, with that said, before we even move on, some people swear that old fashioned should be made with rye whiskey. And I can see where that's coming from. Back in the old days, rye was much more popular than bourbon. Bourbon kind of came around in the turn of the century, started getting really popular. But before that, there was rye whiskey, especially like Pennsylvania, Maryland-style whiskeys. And if you want a solid rye whiskey for your old-fashioned, Rittenhouse, Bottled and Bond. Again, Bottled and Bond, checked by the federal government, promising you that it's what they say it is, a quality product. And it's really great. And this is, on my live happy hour that we just had, I tried it. I've had it before plenty of times, but I tried it on its own and just tasted it, and I was pleasantly surprised by how wonderful this rye is. So this is really great for any of your cocktail needs, but especially if you want a rye-forward old-fashioned. Then you're also going to need, of course, angostura bitters. You can use really any bitters if you'd like, but we're at the Hardwood. I'm trying to follow an old-school classic recipe, so angostura is definitely the best way to go. And then some sugar. And I will go over the sugar aspect when we get there. You're most certainly going to need a good chunk of ice. I highly suggest using a block. If you can't get handcrafted ice, which I know seems like it would be hard to do, but when we get to this point, I'll explain how easy it is now to get quality ice. Just try not to use anything that comes out of your freezer at home. Go to your local fast food joint and get some of their ice, because good example, McDonald's ice, Coca-Cola pays a lot of money for their product to be there. So they don't want it messed up in any way, especially with like local waters. They want it to be as consistent as possible. So they provide water to turn into ice. So it's not going to be the nicest of ice, but it will at least be quality enough to make a great cocktail at home. So again, we'll go over the ice in a little bit. You're also going to need an orange. And then, let's say something to put it in. How about a glass? A rocks glass. If you don't say so myself, it's a little dirty, but you know what? I'm the one that's going to be drinking it. We're not open to the public right now because of the whole executive order thing. So whatever, no big deal. So let's keep on moving. So let's go ahead and let's talk about a little bit about the Old Fashioned. The Old Fashioned comes around from the 1880s. And again, I mentioned earlier the Pendennis Club is where most people claim that the Old Fashioned originated it. And the whole idea was this guy walked in, he's like tired of these bartenders with chips on their shoulders making all these drinks with citrus and different types of sugars. He's like, I just want a drink the way my father would have a drink, the old-fashioned way. And so that's the idea how the old-fashioned came about. And that's how a cocktail and the specs of cocktail were born. And what we just went through were the specs of cocktail. You need a spirit, you need bitters, you need sugar, and you need a water element. Water, in our situation, being ice. Okie dokie, skiddly doo. So we're going to take our rocks glass and the angostura bitters. So 3 to 5 dashes, depending on how full your bottle is. So we'll do 5, a heavy 5. And the reason being, you just want to make sure your glass is completely coated. And if your bottle's close to empty, it's going to take a lot more dashes to coat that bottom of the glass. So yeah, so if you can tell, it looks about 1/4 ounce. Now we're going to move on to our sweetened element. And we're going to go ahead and use a cube of sugar with my handy dandy sugar grabbing tool. So the thing about Old Fashions, I dropped this in here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about sugar. So as you can see, the angostura is getting absorbed into that cube. We're going to let it do its thing right now. And while it's absorbing and kind of breaking down, I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about the whole sugar aspect of the cocktail. So when it comes to Old Fashions, at this point, some people will use simple syrup. Some people will do like I did, use cube sugar. You can always play around with your sugars. You can use turbinado sugar. You can use demerara sugar. You can use any of your simple syrups. You could even go on the extreme and make a variation because there are hundreds upon hundreds of variations. And you could use even like an orgeat or some other type. I have an old-fashioned variation with rum that has a splash of falernum in there. So as long as it follows these specs that we talked about earlier, I think it's fine for it to be considered an old-fashioned. So a lot of people, but I like using cube sugar because it's a very old way of making cocktails, and also it provides a different mouthfeel. So it's going to be those grains are going to be on your palate. You're gonna totally just have the sugar, not just it just be like completely sweet the moment it hits your mouth, because you do get sweetness from the bourbon, but it's going to dissolve on your tongue. It's just going to be more of a elevated experience, if you will, just more of an overall experience. And when you get to the bottom of your cocktail, that sugar is going to be more dissolved, and it'll be a little bit sweeter, and the last sip will be probably better than the first and get you ready for your next drink. Let's get a muddler. Sorry for that bang. So another thing that a lot of bartenders will do right now, and a lot of recipes call for, is a splash of soda water. Sometimes you see bartenders when they make an old fashioned take a soda gun, put a splash of carbonated water, or even take a Topo Chico or their local carbonated bottle and pour it over the cube to help it dissolve. The reason I don't do that is simply because I don't like the idea of carbonated things going flat and just being a part of this drink that we're putting all this effort into making to give you the best experience. So I don't do it. I just let the angostura do the work, and I muddle it. So that's actually what's quite simple. You can tell by when you break your cube if it needs more or less, because the way it breaks down. So yeah, so it's a nice coating on the bottom. Almost looks as if you did it wrong, but I assure you, you did it. This is how you want it to look. Granulated mixed with your angostura bitters. I Also, a weird thing, apparently sugar cubes are not really a thing anymore because they are not restocking. Even before the crisis and everything started happening, like sugar cubes just quite hard to find. So from here, we're going to take our old granddad bonded. Going to take a 2-ounce measure. Learned a cool tip from my dear friend Brant, who actually showed me how to make this drink. If it wasn't for him, I don't even know if I'd be bartending. So, going to measure and not let it touch the lip of the measure. So a full 2 ounces is going to be to the actual line. Like, you don't want it to be shy of the lip of the measure because that's not a proper 2 ounces. It is, the meniscus needs to be like right at the tip, or meniscus is at the bottom. You know, it just needs flush. Add that to your glass. Always get your dirty tools out of the way while you're building, just so you can just stay as organized as possible. It reminds me of a story when I first started learning how to cook. One of the chefs, he's like, "Hey, will you cut up some mirepoix?" And I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "Well, let's get your carrots, your onions, let's get your celery." He's like, "All right, now break these down." I'm like, "Okay." And I was just hacking at him. I had no idea. And he came back behind me, and he just kind of just grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. He's like, "Okay." He like took my cutting board full of garbage, just moved to the side. He's like, "Let's start over." And then he stood by me and showed me how to properly cut mirepoix. With that said, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. Whatever. So, we're going to take this ice. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the ice. So this ice, it comes out of a machine called the Climb Bell. A Climb Bell is a mechanism that freezes huge blocks of ice, about 300-pound blocks. It takes 2 to 3 days, depending on the temperature, outside especially. And it freezes from the bottom up. And what it's doing, it's circulating the water while it freezes. And while it's doing that, it's pushing all the air molecule and sediment to the top of the block, and it's just slowly freezing it. So it's just pushing it to make it where that's like pure H2O frozen. It's extremely dense. There's no air in there to help it melt away faster. There's no sediment in there to add any unwanted flavors to your drink. And it is definitely the best way to go because these high dense blocks, they last longer, they properly dilute your cocktail, and it just is an overall experience. So this is I get my ice from a company called Fat Ice. Fat Ice is out of Austin. They are amazing. They do a great job, and they actually provide cubes, not necessarily of this size, but great quality cubes, especially for your home bar at Specs all over Texas. So I highly suggest it. And if you are out of states, I'm sure there is an ice purveyor that will happily provide you with ice for your home bar. Like an example, 100 in New York. So we're going to take our tongs. We're going to take a bar spoon. And we are going to use our bar spoon, to lightly guide in that cube. Just let it settle down. You don't want to be splashing, making a mess. You know, there's people watching you and stuff like that. So this is a really fun part. I was really excited to show you guys this because this was all my bartending and stuff. I have the best friends, man. They like especially when I open up the hardwood, they like didn't give me too much caca. They like really just came and showed me all the tricks and trades. So the idea of a bar spoon is to get into your drinks. So you want to get your shovel or your blade under the cube, just lightly. You want to keep your elbow into your body, and you want to let your wrist do the work. And just lightly hold the spoon like you're holding a pencil, and just let your wrist do the work. You want to make sure you're making as little noise as possible. You don't want to be clanking around too much. You don't necessarily have to look at it. You know, it's about 30 to 50 spins depending on the temperature of the ice and the temperature of your bar and stuff like this. So while I'm talking, I'm not even sure. And so you always want to lift your cube, get an eye on it, see, because what we're trying to do is chill the glass. So we lift the glass, you can see it's starting to chill. And they're also looking for that dilution. You want about 1/8 of an inch of dilution, but for a bonded bourbon, you might want to actually have it a little bit higher to maybe even almost 1/4 inch. And the reason is because bonded bourbons cannot be over or under 100 proof in alcohol. So it's quite strong. So we do consider that when we're diluting our cocktail. And also when you lift it, you're taking all that sugar and you're just getting it all around that cube, getting it just totally incorporated. And this is helping dissolve that sugar. And your first sip, like I said, the first sip is definitely going to be the most rough around the edges. And the way that we do drinks here at the Hardwood, we have drinks that will let you know that you are drinking. They are going to be rough around the edges. You're going to know you're drinking whiskey. You're going to know you're drinking rum. You're going to know you're going to drink a tequila. So this is a great, so if you're a whiskey fan and you think you like an old fashioned and you just really just like whiskey sweet, not necessarily recommend an old fashioned, but if you're going to have an old fashioned, I always suggest trying it this way because it is the best way, in my opinion. All right, so we're going to take our orange, we're going to pull a nice swath. Guys, these things are dangerous. It will take chunks out of your fingers. I have seen professionals do it just as much as any beginner in bartending. So you want to make sure your fingers are completely away. You want to hold it kind of like you're throwing, I don't know I like baseball. I don't know if that's what, maybe a pitcher out there that's watching this, if there's a certain hold that is. I don't know. But hold it where your fingers are away and let the peeler do the work. Just pull into it and just let the peeler cut. Done. So from here, you can, at home you don't need to do this. Depending on what's going on at the bar, we might pre-pill our swaths and trim them up and give them some nice angles and just make them pretty so they're sitting in the glass. Whatever. So 6 inches up, 3 inches back, and express. Oh man, I hope y'all can see what I'm seeing. That looked great. So, and then just help that oil go on. So the reason we do that is because the lighter oils or the sweeter oils are going to spray forward over your cocktail, and it's going to just help be a wonderful experience. And all the heavier oils fall to the back, and those are bitter. And we literally added an ingredient called bitter, so we don't necessarily want to add more to it. We want to control this as much as possible. My garnishes, I always put away from the guest. So it's kind of in the back. So when they have the first sip, it's kind of in their sight. I add garnish. If y'all watch the Hemingway video, I talk a lot about the garnish, how I don't like drinks that are served strained and up and things like that. I don't add garnishes to them because I don't like put all that time into the mouthfeel. That I don't like things touching my lips when I'm drinking it and things like that because you just want to be silky, viscous. But this is a drink on the rocks. As you can see, a beautiful cube of ice in there. And there's the granulated sugar in there. So adding a garnish to this, it's not going to take away from any experience. If anything, add to it with the nose from the rind. And so you're gonna try this drink. Granulated sugar is gonna get on your tongue, stay on your palate. It's gonna dissolve, and you slowly drink this. By the way, you do not chug old fashions. I mean, you can if you want to, but when you come in here and you want shots and things like that, and I'm like, I'm sorry, we don't necessarily do shots here. We're trying to try something a little different for our community and just make some proper cocktails. And you're like, well, just make one of them whiskey old fashioned. You chug it, sure, whatever, but don't do that. Don't be that guy. So, great mouthfeel. Last sip should be sweeter than the first, and it pops off the endorphins in your brain and gets you ready for your next drink. Plan on doing a follow-up to this, guys. A little bit, talk about more about whiskeys and things like that. But I think this is a great drink to know, have in your Rolodex, mental Rolodex, and just enjoy. For sure. Guys, this is our old-fashioned. Cheers. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.